Hey guys, how you going? It's Savan from the Mighty 60 on Instagram. So today we'll be running you through a bit of our editing process using Adobe Lightroom. So stay tuned and hopefully we both learn a bit. So before we start, I just wanted to go through what camera I use, what lens I use, because I know there's been a couple of questions like that. So the setup that I use for basically every single photo is my D750. So it's a Nikon D750 full frame camera, and I use a 24 to 120 F4 lens. So that's getting that out of the way. That's pretty much the only thing I shoot with now. I can't stress this enough. If you're using your own DSLR, I highly recommend shooting in RAW format. That'll basically make the editing process a lot easier. What it does is it shoots your photos in like layers. So you've got a few layers to play with rather than one flat image like most of the JPEG files are. If you don't know anything about that, don't worry too much because there should be a couple of videos online that should help you out a little bit more. But if you can, shoot in RAW and we'll get into it. Alright, so I'm in Lightroom right now. Up here on the left hand side is the actual information that was taken when I took the photo. So those are all my settings there if you guys wanted to copy it or basically just take out of this video of how I shot this photo. Generally I like to stay in between F4 and F5.6. Basically just gives you a good depth of field and also make sure that the car or the subject's always in focus. So this is the final image here. That's what we'll be hoping to achieve, and it basically has all the little things, tips and tricks that I normally use in this one photo. So we'll go ahead, reset this one. So this is back to the original. As you can see, quite dark in the foreground, quite dark in the whole picture really. So what I like to do first of all is jump over to the right hand side and visit the lens corrections area. So you can see I've been selected the profile section here. There's two buttons, basically click them both. That's enable profile corrections and remove chromatic aberration. So all that really means is it'll take the bad details out of the lens you're using. So if it's got some darkening in the corners or some funny colors or that kind of thing. So click both of them. Usually Lightroom does a pretty good job with that. And now the next thing that I like to do is fiddle with the distortion. So for this particular one, I pull the distortion all the way up. It doesn't change much. As you can see, there's not a massive difference, but it does kind of warp the car so that it looks slightly taller with where the wheel arch is there. So nothing crazy, but that's what I like to do to start off with. Then we click onto the manual section up here in the lens correction folder still, and this is the manual distortion. So I like to bump this up a little bit. I don't go too crazy with this. I think about 80-ish will look good. As you can see, there's some warping in the borders here and that kind of thing. So what we'll do is just click this constrain crop button. So that constrain crop button basically pops the whole image back in and puts it back to the way it was. So yeah, so that's the first section done. So that's the lens corrections. Don't really have to fiddle with any of the hues or anything like that. The next one we like to go to is the basic curve, which is right at the very top. So by clicking the basic curve, we open up to all the adjustments. I start off with the vibrance and the saturation. So colors are a big part in a photo. This is just the way I like to do it, and this photo is a bit moodier than most. So I drop the vibrances. I always drop the vibrances and boost the saturation. In this particular photo, I think 50 looks about good, and we'll bump it up by about 50 as well. So it doesn't have to be perfect because these always change towards the end of the photo. But once we've got that done, that basically gets the picture ready for editing. What I'll do next is I'll bump the clarity up. So some people like to go crazy with this and it just starts looking rather fake and just doesn't look very realistic anymore. So I leave it around about that 40 to 50 mark. So in particular, this photo looks good at about 50 or so. Obviously, it's going to change between your photos and whatnot. So just take this as a general guide. The next selection I will do is I will drop all the blacks and I'll drop the whites. So I'll drop both of these first and then I'll bump up the shadows. So Once you do this, the photo will kind of come to life, and all you're really trying to achieve between these 3 sliders is making the photo come to life but not look so flat. So for this one here, I think dropping the blacks a little bit more than the whites will look good, and it does look quite even here. The next thing I notice in this photo is that I've got quite a bit of glare on the actual car itself here. So what I'm going to do by that is using the highlighting slider. So the highlights need to get dropped down, so all that does is it reduces the glare and obviously the higher lights of the photo. So I'll drop that down quite a bit since it's quite a bit of glare there. That also brings down the colour in the sky, so it doesn't become as bright and it pumps up the colours there. So that's pretty good. The next thing I'll do is add a little bit of contrast. I don't ever go crazy with contrast, just enough so that it pops a little bit more. And now we've got a photo that still looks rather realistic, but doesn't go crazily bad. Looking at my next steps, I will use some of Lightroom's probably best features, which are the filters. So first of all, I'll use this circle button here. It's a gradual filter. Click on that and basically select what you want to do with the image. So what these do is they're a selection in the image which doesn't change the whole image, but just where you select. So first of all, this tyre looks quite dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag a circle around the tyre. So just shape the tyre, select that over the top there. As you can see, this kind of highlights now, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring the shadows up. So I'll bring it down to around about 40 or so, and then I'll do the back wheel as well while I'm at it. So we'll bring that around about the same, so 40, maybe a bit more since you can't really see it. And now the front is probably the only bit that needs to be lightened a little bit more, so we'll do that as well. So again, same thing, shadows, this might have to be a bit more since there's not a lot of detail there. So we'll do that. We might actually have to bump up the exposure for this too. So bumping up the exposure will make it a little bit brighter. Drop the highlights just for the license plate there. And now that's looking pretty good. So everything's looking a little bit more visible here. So you can see kind of the recovery points, the winch, the license plate, etc. Nothing looks fake, which is all we like to achieve here. The next thing I'm going to do to add a bit more gloomy look is use this, which is the graduated filter. So click on that or click N, which is the shortcut for that. And what I'm going to do is, before I drag it down, I just want to select the exposure and bring this down to maybe about 2 stops or so. So we'll bring it down to 2. And now what we're going to do is just going to drag down from the top, and this creates kind of that dark feel from the top, still making it feel like it's kind of nighttime. So as you can see, there's a bit of a hue to it, so I'm going to bring this temperature slider up, so that'll get rid of that kind of bluish hue. So we'll bring that up, probably about 30 looks alright. We'll also drop the shadows, make it look a bit darker, and also drop the blacks and make it a little bit darker too. So I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out. That doesn't look bad at all. The next thing I'm going to look at doing, it might be a bit dark actually, we'll pop this up a little bit. Next thing I'm going to look at doing is adding some colour on the right hand side. As you can see, the left here, it does have quite a bit of colour on the left, whereas on the right hand side it just kind of dulls off. So we'll use our filters again. This time we'll put it back to normal, and this time I'm just going to bump up the saturation. So I never go 100% with the sliders, just because sometimes you get a bit of an artificial look on them. But using that slider on this side here kind of bumps up and matches with the other side now. So now you've got a pretty nice photo. I like to just tweak it a little bit more from here, so I might add a little bit more saturation, get the lights looking a bit nicer. We've got a bit more of a background now too, and I think that looks quite good. The only thing I might do real quick is click on this filter here and maybe make this a tad brighter, just something I noticed. But other than that, I think we've pretty much hit our end result. So it's not a very hard amount of steps. If you do want to adjust colors, you can do that as well by going into this color tab here. I can see a little bit of blue on this windscreen, so maybe reducing the saturation on the blues there kind of dulls the windscreen a bit, makes it look a bit tintier, I guess, if that's a word. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, how that's turned out. Like I said, those are pretty much the guidelines of how I edit. So I just bring the whites and blacks down, bump the clarity and contrast up, and then go from there. So I am, yeah, pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export it. So before I do that, actually, I'll show you how to crop to Instagram. So by cropping to Instagram, what you want to do is go here, click on crop, go to your aspect ratio, click on original here, and then go down to where it says 4:5 or 8:10. So that's the Instagram crop, that's the biggest crop you get, so you get that kind of long portrait shot on your phone. And I'll just crop this down a little bit so you can still see most of the car, and you can see a bit of that sky as well without it being too harsh. So that's it, that's the photo done there. I'm rather happy with that, like I said. So what we're going to do now is just export it. So you click export. When you're going through here, select your folder. So Mighty 60, edit, and then you scroll down. Make sure that your color space is on sRGB, which is great for social media. Make sure your quality is full, and we can scroll down and we can export it. Alright guys, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed that one today. That was a little bit of insight behind my editing process and how I've been doing it for the last couple of years. If you have any more questions, feel free to message me on both Instagram or leave a comment below on the YouTube video. And while you're here, make sure you like and subscribe. So we'll see you guys soon, and stay safe.